in lighting gear. And so it's just kind of be kind of like photography hacks also. All right. So what I'm trying to do is prove a point is that once you know the concepts about lighting, once you understand what good light is and how to create it, you can literally use anything. And that's basically what I did as I went into the 99-cent store and grabbed some stuff. I bust the bank and I did spend $20 on a reflector and use that. But for the most part, it's going to be, and I got a few specialty items, video lights in there that I use near the end just for some creative stuff. But generally, I just wanted to show you that you can produce amazing photos without a lot of money. Let's get going now. And so here's my portfolio. If you go to srlmedia.media, you can take a look at some of my work. And then if you want to ask me some questions about any of the photos, you're welcome to do that too. So what do I specialize in? I consider myself an expert at on-location portraits. I started out as an international wedding photographer, and that really got me trained to be able to shoot in any situation, a variety of lighting situations, and I had to do everything like in 1 minute or 2 minutes because that's just the way weddings are, and that really prepared me for being able to what I do now is teaching and shooting on location, because you really have to be on your toes and be able to set things up quickly. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Sony 16 rule actually. And if you understand the Sony 16 rule, you can understand the 3 different types of lighting situations. And so what somebody did a long time ago, they were pretty smart when we didn't have light meters or they weren't as easy as what we had now. And you just, in the old days, you just had to look at the sky and figure out your camera settings. And I kind of wish we did that right now and put ourselves under that situation just so we can understand light and how much light there is out there in the real world. So somebody measured the brightest time that the earth would be lit, right? And that's high noon sun. And what does that look like? And they call it the Sunny 16 rule, which means when it's sunny, you set your camera to f16 and you set your shutter and your ISO to the same, usually 100, 100 if you're doing portraits, somewhere around there, and you'll get a good exposure. So let's, this thing is not moving the way I want it to. Okay, good. So f16, what does that look like? Bright sun, sharp shadows. So if you're out there and you see very sharp shadows on the ground, you're at f16. And f16, when a photographer says, oh man, that was around f16, it doesn't mean that they shot at f16, that f-stop. They're just referring to the strength of light. And so we need a general reference of knowing how bright something is. And so when you say f16, that means it was really bright outside, or I needed a lot of light. And it looks like sharp shadows. But if you were to set your camera at f2 in that environment, you would be at 1/6400th of a second. And so that'll just give you some references. I'll give you both ends, the f16 and what it's like at f2. Now, let's reduce half that light. So we're at f16, and let's reduce half the light. And what does it look like at f11? Well, you're going to be in an atmosphere, and those shadows are going to be slightly softened. And how is that possible? How is that light slightly softened when you're outdoors? Well, maybe there's a little bit of a cloud coverage, or maybe you're shooting through some, trees or something like that. Something that kind of diffuses that light softly. Maybe there's some haze in the air, or maybe it's lower towards sunset, and the sun is a little bit lower and it's shooting through some haze or some atmosphere and making it a little bit softer, and that's your situation there. But generally, they're about the same. Now, let's take half the light from f11. What do you get? You get shooting at, there's the settings for that. You get f8, and that's overcast or you see very slight shadows on the ground. Then you're in an f8 situation. And here's the camera settings for that. Now let's take half the light from f8. What kind of situation are you at there? You're at 5.6, and that's when you're in the shade, right? And that makes sense, because if you're at f8 and you don't see any shadows and it's overcast, and then you put yourself under shade, then that's what this is. Now this is open shade, meaning when you're under in a shaded situation, your sky is still fairly bright. There's not a lot of cloud coverage. It's not like you're in the shade and you're in bright overcast. You're in the shade when it's sunny weather, basically. And then F4 would be like, oh, and those are the settings for 5.6. And so if you're shooting at F2, that would be around 1/800th of a second. Okay, so what's F4? F4 is dark shade. And so now let's say you're in a shaded situation, but the sky is a bit more covered, or you're in a little bit darker area and you don't have access to really bright skies, then that's what F4 is. And that's half the light of 5.6. Now, what's half the light of this? You're at 2.8. And what does that look like? That's very dark shade, or just twilight, maybe just kind of when that sun barely gets to around that horizon level, or just below it. That's when you're in that situation there. Those are the camera settings there. And then let's take half that light. Now you're in a situation where it's nighttime, and when that sun goes below the horizon, then you're in the low light situation. So I break these situations up into 3 situations. Okay, and so you can see that this is the number 1 situation right here, which is the F16, F11. What do I use? So you want to shoot in this situation here. This is the hardest situation to shoot in, okay? Because why? The sun is very strong and it's producing very strong shadows. So why is that so difficult? Well, let's say you're shooting and half the body's in highlight, or the sun, and half the body's in shadow. And if that shadow is very strong, you're going to have to do a lot of Photoshop to make that look good. And so that's why shooting on location in bright light is extremely difficult, but you just have to remember one thing. You have to be light aware. Where is that source of light coming from? And then you can adapt in that way, and I'll show you some tips for that. So what do I use in this situation? First of all, you're most likely going to use flash, because flash is very powerful. In general, flash is about 100 times more powerful than your basic video light. Now, I do use a video light, a portable video light, but I use a video light that's 8 to 10,000 lumens. Most video lights go anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 lumens. That's your standard video light that you take with you that's battery operated. I do use a video light, but it's 8 to 10,000 lumens, and that's why I'm able to use it in this situation. But not everybody, you know, those are $1,500 video lights, and so not everybody has those, but I do. And if you're on a budget, definitely use a reflector. You can buy what size of reflector? I would say you'd need at least 42 inches. And I'm sure you can find a nice reflector in Precision. They have those all over the place, probably for under $50, around there. Okay, so let's move on. For some reason, it looks like I can't use my arrow button. I just have to press the slides going down here, so they'll just do that. Okay, here's the second situation. You're in overcast down to dark shade. What do you use here? And you can use flash, and you can use video light here, especially if it's an F4 dark shade. Or maybe if you just need a little bit of catch light, you might be able to do it at 5, 6. Okay, and so that's and the reason why you could use a reflector and not, you might get a little bit of bump with the reflector, but if it's overcast, it's hard to use a reflector when it's overcast. But sometimes I still am able to use a reflector if it's in the shade, especially if it's open shade and there's some light coming in. I can kind of maybe give some uplight or something like that just to get a bit of light on the eyes. That's possible. But what you see on the left-hand column there, whatever's in red, that's what I use the most. So at the top level, number one, I'm using flash and reflector. At that medium level, I'm using flash and video light. And then on this last area, the very dark twilight, I use video light mostly and some flash, but I use a lot of times the flash for backlight, or if I'm gelling something at nighttime, that's when I use my flash. So here's my rule. I have one rule that works really well, and that is when the sun goes below the horizon, put the darn flash away. You can go to video light at that point. And the reason why you want video light is because video light is what you see is what you get. And so it's much faster. So, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going to constant light. I'm going to video light mostly. I do use my flash maybe if I'm trying to give a highlight around the hair, or I want to gel the background of color, and I'll use flash from that point. So those are the three different lighting situations, and this is what I use. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit now about that's the lighting situation, but how do you find good light? Okay. And I want you to see the following photos. They all have something in common. And I want you to look at these photos and I want you to tell me, you can write in the chat there, what do all these pictures have in common? Okay, I want you to look at them and analyze them. And if you see something in common with all these photos, I'm trying to make it obvious here. Type it in the chat. I want to hear you guys. I mean, it's so hard sometimes to present this way because I can't see the reaction. I can't tell if you're, laughing or not laughing, or thinking I'm giving me that stupid look or something like that, like I don't know what I'm talking about. It's really hard for me to see. So any kind of time you can throw something in the chat is awesome. All right. So what was it? What was it with that all those photos had in common, which create great light? Well, that is, of course, a catch light. And so a catch light to me, that is really what creates good light. Now, the question is, how is a catch light created? And so you want to know the exact science. What is the exact science of a catch light? And, a lot of times when you first learn it, they tell you, oh, of course, it's just your light, the brighter light source or whatever, a light source. And they don't really go into detail what it is. But I thought about it a long time. And I said, I need to define and what exactly creates a catch light. And so what creates a catch light is when there's a contrast of lighting. The more contrast there is in the lighting situation, the more prominent the catch light. So if your subject is in a darker area, so mostly all where they're around is in a darker area, if their eyes see to a brighter area, then that is going to produce a great catch light. But you have to be in a contrast of lighting, okay? And so when you're outside, when you're outdoors, a catch light is created by only two ways: a reflection that the sun creates, and two, the sky. Those are the only two ways you're going to get a catch light when you're outdoors. Of course, you can get a catch light when you're indoors. You can get it by a window. You can get it by, an open sliding door or any kind of door or large archway or things like that. But when you're outdoors, then you're only going to get it through through a reflection or the sky. So let's analyze this a little bit more, and let me show you what this means. So let's look at this picture. You can obviously see that there's catch lights in her eyes, but how is it created? This is all, I didn't use any external lighting at all. All I used was the sun, period. So the sun was giving me both types of lighting here. There was giving me backlight, which creates that highlight around the hair, and then also the catch light in the eye. How is that created? Well, good thing I have a 42 megapixel camera, because then I can zoom in on the eye and we could actually see what that catch light is. So let's do that. Let's see that. Look at that. So if you examine that eye, you can see me right in the middle there. What is creating that catch light? It's the sky. So, but how does that work, right? So she's in the shade, and she's in a darker area than the sky. If she was in the same brightness as that sky, you would see no catch light at all, because it would be all bright. But because she's in a darker area and where she is looking is brighter, then that's what's going to create the amazing catch light. So let's keep going. The sun is low, and so when the sun is low, it creates more shade, right? Because when the sun is high, it's going to bounce down and it's going to hit the earth. It's going to hit the ground, and that ground is going to be lit. And so when you stand out there, you're not going to get the contrast of lighting as much when the sun is high. But when the sun is lower, it may not necessarily, it creates more shade, and it's not going to shine on the ground per se, directly on the ground. And you're going to find a lot of areas when there's low near sunset where you're going to find a tremendous amount of shade because the sun is lower. And then when you put your subject there, you're going to get a beautiful highlight around the hair, but you will also get that sun will also light the sky in front of your subject, giving you a beautiful catch light. So you can get two sources of light in one when you're at low sun, and it's probably the most ideal time to shoot portraits when you don't have any lighting at all and you don't know how to create it. Now, how did I create this catch light? Again, thank you for my 42 megapixel camera. And you can see that she's in complete shade. You can see me right in the middle there. And where is she looking out? She's looking out into the sky. And so although she's in a shaded covered area, her eyes are looking out into a brighter area of the sky, in a diffuse sky. It's not like it's a bright sky where she's looking directly into the sun, but that diffuse sky is still a lot brighter than the area that she's in, and it's actually creating a huge softbox, giving you some beautiful light. Let's go examine another situation. And my last one. So the catch lights reveal the lighting environment. So here I am in Cuba, and let's zoom in real close and see what it's like. What is that catch light created by? It's literally by a reflection. It's the buildings that are across from him because the sun is lighting on it. So the sun is behind him, creating shade in that building, but then it's lighting up the buildings across from him, creating that catch light. And so there it's acting as a reflector. Okay, so that's a little bit about every lighting situation you'll be involved with, and also how to create great light. Now, let's go into some portrait ideas, 7 portrait ideas that I have for you to actually take some creative pictures in all of these lighting different situations. Let's first start off in the most difficult, the bright sun. Okay, so good light equals catch lights. Be obsessed with finding catch lights. Everywhere you see a catch light, look at it and go, how is that catch light created? I want you to step into, here's good practice as you're walking around. Step into any situation and go, where can I find a catch light, or where can I create a catch light for my subject? Every situation that you're at, I want you to try to find the best place that would create a good catch light. And just have to remember that you need a contrast of lighting. And so your subject has to be in a darker area looking into a brighter area. Okay, so here's the number one rule to do or situation is I say nose to the light. This is extremely important when you're shooting in bright light. So here I was, it's probably about 2 p.m. in Hawaii, and the sun was coming through the trees, but it was very, very, very strong. And my one rule is that you have to put the nose to the light. Why? Look at this subject here. If her nose was pointing at the camera, what would her face look like? You can tell what it would look like is because you could see under her chin. What is under her chin there? A huge shadow, right? And so if she's looking at me, the camera, and not nose towards the light, we are going to have a problem with that portrait. It's going to look absolutely terrible. Because your eye goes to what's brightest and what's sharpest, and do you want her face being the darkest part of your portrait? No. That's why it's very important when you're shooting in bright light that you have to keep that nose to the light to create a great portrait. You can shoot all day long, and if you're in bright light and that nose is not towards the light, you're going to spend all day photoshopping. Okay, so you don't want that to happen, and here's the case, right? You see under her chin, if you don't have that nose to the light, her face is going to look like what under her chin looks like, complete shadow. So especially on strong light, you have to do this. Now you can get away with it if it's not in harsh light, but you know, and so that's why we get into these bad habits, because maybe we do shoot at sunset or low light, and you know, Photoshop's pretty great. We can get away with it and fix it. You know, oh wow, it still looks great because I fixed it in Photoshop, because you were maybe in a situation where there wasn't a lot of high contrast in your lighting, so you got away with it. But when you're in bright light, that's when you are tested and to see actually how good you are. In fact, you know what? You got to go out there and challenge yourself. I want everybody this week to go out, take a subject out, shoot in bright light, whatever it is in Austin, say, you know, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., go out and see what you can come out with. Right in bright light. See what kind of portraits you can do. Test yourself, and that will get you in the right habit of shooting in bright light. Okay, here's another situation. Oh, let me go back to here. Again, this is in Hawaii, and what happens was she's like doing these traditional Hawaiian dances, and she started dancing, and the light is only coming from one direction up, and so when her face is not facing that way, it's like my shots are terrible. So literally 30 seconds within her dancing, I go, stop, this is not going to work. We can only do one shot here. Can you give me a pose, some sort of dancing pose or whatever? But I need you to put your face up towards the light, and then that's what we came up with. Now here, it's same thing. I saw some bright colors, and whenever you're shooting, every f-stop has its advantages. And so if you're shooting in an f11 or f16 situation, look for bright colors, because those colors are going to pop like crazy in the bright sun. And so that's your advantage, but you need to learn how to shoot with them. And so in this case, I was in Paris. We went to this special section where they had all these houses painting in different colors and everything. It looked pretty cool. Kind of looked like you were in Italy, but you were in Paris. But it's this one little small street in Paris that's like this. So I had some models come out and some friends of ours. There actually were Moulin Rouge dancers, which were pretty cool. So anyways, so what did I do when I'm in this situation? I tell the subject, I said, hey, can you look up toward the sun area and feel the sun on your face? Because what happens now, then the subject will give you the most perfect situation where the sun is the brightest. Because if you actually try this, if you go out in the sun and you look up towards the sun and you want to position your face where you feel the sun and it's the most hottest, you can easily do that if you're the subject. And so a lot of times I'll let the subject figure out where the best lighting situation is by just telling them to feel the sun on their face. And then it's super bright, right? So then you do a pose where they're closing their eyes. And so that's what I did in this case. And a lot of times you can say, okay, well, just open your eyes for a second. I'm going to count to 3, open, and then I'm going to take the shot, So you go 1, 2, and then they'll open, and then boom, take the shot, and then you got the eyes open. Okay, so that's bright light. And again, you can use a reflector in that situation that doesn't cost you a lot of money. Everybody can have one of these, and you can do some lighting. Now, there's a reflector in your environment, and here I am in Cuba, and I am going to use the street as a reflector. Here we are shooting at the most unideal situation. I don't know if you've ever been in Cuba in the summertime at 2 p.m. It's very hot. And it's very nasty lighting, but you have buildings there. So I'm going to go in these buildings and I'm going to use the shade. And you can see as I go up closer that it's giving me some terrific, even uplight. And you can see the catch light in the lower area of her eye there. Now I use that lighting and I realize where that lighting is coming from. I go, hey, let's do this other pose. And so now I repose her. And you're going to see that beautiful catch light that was given to me by the reflection on the ground. And if I zoom in, because I do have a 42 megapixel camera, if you don't have one, maybe you should go to buy one right now, Precision. I think they have a few you can get. I would highly recommend the Sony A7 R3, or if you want 60 megapixels, you can get the R4, and I think they're on sale right now. Just FYI, just a little side note. Okay, anyways, so see that catch light there underneath the eye? What was that caused by? The street. You just saw the setup of it. And so there's different ways that you can find these catch lights and be creative about it. Now, let's try something different. Let's try something more creative. Let's try something that maybe you've never done before. How about getting out on the lake or the water? Now you want to go out in the water, right? Okay, well, you can use your iPhone and you can get a waterproof case for your iPhone. They probably have one right there, Precision, but you can get one anywhere. And you can go out and be more aggressive with your photos. Now, here I am with just my iPhone. And it's in the morning and it's not the most ideal situation. And if I were exposed for her, my backgrounds would be completely blown out. And so I need to get some lighting. Now, I'm not going to recommend going out with your flashes out in the water. I have been electrocuted by doing that. I took out 2 flashes with a power pack. One of the flashes fell off the stand and it was falling towards the water. So what's your natural reaction what to do when you see your flash falling and about to hit the water? You're going to reach out and grab it, right? So I went out and I reached out and grabbed it, but it was at the same time hitting the water and I got a little shock. And I'm not quite sure if I can still feel everything in this thumb still because of being electrocuted from that flash. So I'm not going to recommend do that, but you can be creative and just bring out a reflector and you're never going to be shocked by a reflector. But it allows you to maybe try going out in the pool and doing some shots, being creative and getting out there. And so now you have your iPhone, you have the water, you have your waterproof case, and you just have a simple reflector. And you can get a shot just like that. And I guarantee you, man, these phones nowadays are getting so good. It's scary. Of course, you can even put it in portrait mode now. I mean, it doesn't look great in low light, but for bright light situations or when there's a lot of light, it looks great. Again, you're still going to need to buy a nice mirrorless camera if you want to take great pictures still, but you can use your phone in certain situations. Here's another reflector where there's just the sun is coming in from behind them, and then we're just taking a big reflector and shining some light into them. And you can see the gentleman's sunglasses. You could see that square reflector that we had on the ground, and you can see how he was lit up there because of that catch light in his eye. Okay, good. So let's see here. Let's move on. Number 2. Motion. Or is that number 3? Did I number these wrong? Yeah, that should be number 3 actually. But using motion in your photography, okay? And there's a different ways to use motion, and I'm going to show you, okay? And why does motion work? Well, let's look at this picture here. Motion creates a flow, or it just makes the picture a little bit more special, a little bit more random when you add motion into your frame. And you can do it different ways. You can throw things, you can use debris, right? You can, in this case, we used some flower petals and had them flying over them. Now, when you're going to do this and do lighting, I'm shooting at 10 frames per second here because I want to get the perfect shot where those, petals aren't covering the face and everything. You can't use a flash. And the reason why you can't use a flash, because a flash will take, anywhere from 1 second to 5 seconds to recycle. So how are you going to shoot 10 frames per second using your flash in bright light? Is just not going to happen, because you're going to get maybe two shots, usually just one shot when you do this method, and then the rest of the image is going to be dark. So I use my very super strong constant light that I have, that's 8,000 lumens, to get that out, to shoot that, because I'm shooting at 10 frames per second here, okay, to get that shot. And so when you're doing motion, you have to make sure that you can't use flash when you're doing it, okay? All right, so now let's look at motion with my subject. So that was motion, with some debris or some kind of prop or something. But now motion, I had this idea. This is in Hawaii, and I had this idea of this free falling shot, like somebody's just about to fall, and I want that weightlessness feeling. And so what I did was, because it's overcast. Now, people think, oh, I don't need any lighting in overcast because it's all even lighting. Wrong. It is even lighting, but the light is coming from above. And so when the light comes from above, you're still going to get some raccoon eyes, right? Because your eyes are inset. And a lot of times there's going to be darkness on your subject because you're using light, and it's just coming straight from above, and you need to get some light in there to take away some of that darkness on the face. And so this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a little bit more contrast in my subjects. I like highlight and shadow, and I did it without the lighting. Seems a little bit flat, and I want to add a little contrast and a little pop. So even when I'm in overcast, a lot of times I'll use a flash or I'll use a video light just to give me a little pop. And you can see the final image here. And you can see how she's lit up with that video light to give a little bit of highlight and shadow on her, which was not present when I didn't use it. And you've got that falling effect. And I did replace the sky because the sky looks so boring that I wanted. And here's the thing is, it's easy to replace a sky like this. Do you see highlight and shadow in the sky? Yes. But if you don't see highlight and shadow on your subject, and then you replace it with a sky that has highlight and shadow and looks awesome, you go, something doesn't look right there. That looks like a freaking fake sky. So, but if you put highlight and shadow on your subject and you have highlight and shadow in your sky, then it tends to be a little bit more believable, and you can be more aggressive with your skies. Okay, so that's that little light I use. It was called the Stella 1000. It has a burst of 2,500 lumens for about 45 seconds, and then it goes down to 1,000. It happens to be waterproof too, but I'm not sure if Precision sells those types of lights by Light and Motion, but I'm sure they have something very similar to it. And they can make recommendations to you too. But you can just go there. Hey, at least I recommend this. At least getting a couple thousand lumens when you buy a video light, because even at nighttime you need at least a couple thousand lumens, because you have to push it through an umbrella, and the umbrella will take away 75% of the light. So you got to make sure that you have at least 2000 lumens. Okay, so again, this is in lighting situation number 2 in the dark light situation, and overcast, but very dark overcast. This is about the rain. In fact, it did rain a little bit later, so that's why the skies were so dark there. Okay, here's another situation with motion. Okay, and I'm shooting these, they're best friends, and we're going out and having fun. What did I do? I went out to the darn dollar store and just grabbed some packs of cards. In fact, where I am, I live near Vegas, and so you could get a real pack of cards that were used in casinos. They just cut the corners and get them for $1 there at the dollar store. So I just grabbed a few things. Hey, these are always good when you're doing these types of couples shots, or in this case, they were best friends, and we were doing a best friend session. And I was like, hey, I got these cards. Pretend like you're playing cards and have fun with it. And I'm just creating motion. Okay, and you can see. And here's my setup here. I'm just using a simple reflector, and because you have to use constant, right? You can't use flash, and so it's during sunset. I'm setting up a reflector, and see me and my camera. I have a tilt screen on my Sony a7R III, so I could get that low angle. I use the tilt screen so much. I mean, right, that you can see the different types of shots that I get with that low angle. And I normally wouldn't get these shots without the tilt screen, because I would have to be on my stomach to line it up. And how many times do you want to go out on a session and be on your stomach, especially if the ground is wet? You never, right? So consequently, you wouldn't get these angles. And so ever since getting this tilt screen camera, my compositions have been far more creative, and it's been easy for me to do it because I just flip out the screen and I can take these shots. And so a lot of times, what I want to tell you is, when you do the shot and they do the action, a lot of times you're going to get a great shot kind of near the end too, where they look great, because they just realized that they did something funny, and then they kind of interact with each other. And a lot of times after the event, whatever you have them do, you are going to get a good shot. And so here's the thing that you need to remember. Motion equals emotion. So look at your portraits. Do they seem a little bit stale? And so I always, with every portrait session, I always make them do something funny, or move, or do something just to get that emotion out of them. And so here's another situation. Now it went at night, and now I'm going to constant light at nighttime, and I'm having them cross the street, and I want them to run across the street, and I want you to see the expressions that they're getting, right? You're not going to get that with a posed photo. You're only going to get it when they're just moving, and so that movement, you get a certain expression. So usually, when people want to give you their posed face, they've got like one look that they know that they look good in because they take selfies all the time or whatever, and they just kind of stay in that look all the time. So what you're trying to do is show all perspectives of their personality and who they are. You want a wide spectrum of who they are. So that's why you have to add some sort of motion into your session to get that creativity of expression out, and you're going to get these great expressions that you normally wouldn't get. Here I'm using the 24 millimeter 1.4 lens, which I absolutely love because it could do wide angle shots, but then it could also do portraits and blur out the background. And I believe that's on sale too right now for the next couple days. And so here's the shot here. Okay. And what am I exactly using? Well, I just got some lighting. I just went to the 99-cent store and found these awesome makeup lights. And now you can't use a stand for this type of shot. Why not? Well, they're going to be running. They'll run right by the stand. You're not going to have any light. So I have personal assistants, and I have them have their video lights. You can get any low-cost video lights anywhere. I'm sure Precision has tons that you can get. And so I set up the shot, and I have my assistants, and I say, listen, stay at the same distance that you are now. So if they're running forward, you have to run backwards, but keep the same distance. And then I am going to get even lighting throughout my shooting as they run. My exposure is going to be the same because they're at the same distance all the time, regardless of the shot. And so that's another reason why I like bringing assistants with me. And, you can always find somebody. You can use your family members. You can use people who want to learn. And so that's why it's always good to be connected in forums or to go to workshops and you meet people and you go out and do fun projects together and you help each other out. A assistant with your lighting, a voice activated light stand, is much more efficient than actually putting it on your stand. I guarantee you will shoot probably twice as many setups and shots with somebody holding your light, or even more, maybe 3 times as many, and much faster if you get somebody hold in to walk back and forth and set the lighting up. And a lot of times when you walk back and forth with the lighting, you're not going to get it perfect, but it's going to be what? Good enough. And then you're going to take a shot, but it's good enough. That's not great, right? You want it perfect. You want to express your vision in the shot. And if you're producing something that's less than you know that should be better, you just sacrificed your vision. And so that's why I always kind of just go out and use a lighting assistant. And so I went to the 99-cent store and got those. That's probably the last time I'm going to use it. I just did it for fun, but it's big and bulky. I just wanted to show you it's all about the lighting technique that you know, which makes a difference, not necessarily the equipment that you buy. And so you can see here, I'm just using a couple of those. And the reason why I chose those is because it has a large light source because they're spread across. And so I knew it would give me soft light. If I used a light source that was just one of those bulbs, then it would be sharper light and wouldn't be as nice. And so that's why I chose those there. Okay, so now let's talk about shooting in shadows to be creative. Okay, using shadows. And why do I like shadows? So you can see the shot here. Because shadows create mystery. And that's something that gives a little bit different type of look. Now, look at how she's posed here, by the way. Her nose is towards the what? Light, right? Because it's very bright sun. I have to have her nose towards that light. If I had her nose pointed away, the opposite direction, her face would be in complete shadow. And so when you're doing these types of shots, you have to realize where the sun is. One, it creates mystery. It has more interesting compositions. It's not your regular, because shadows change all the time, and sometimes trees look different and whatever. And so if you find these interesting shadows in your environment, you're going to get a great shot and it's going to look a little bit more interesting. Place eyes in the hot spot. So find wherever those hot spots are, place your eyes in the hot spot and make sure that the nose is towards the light. Okay, and you expose for the bright spot on the face. And when you expose for the brightest point, it makes the shadows even more contrasty. okay? So you expose for the brightest point on the face, and then all the shadows become darker and more contrasty. And that's how you get that shot. If you are in automatic mode, it's not going to work. Why is that? Because your camera sees all this darkness in your shot. Like if I place this in automatic mode, it would be way off. The exposure wouldn't even look good, because what the camera would see is like, oh, wow, there's all this dark area here. Let me make it brighter. Let me make it brighter. That's the exact opposite I want, right? I just want that little portion by her face to be perfectly exposed and everything else dark. So this case, you're going to have to shoot in manual mode to do that. I'm looking for more shadows, right? And let's see here. So here I'm in Paris in this mansion, and I see these window pane, and I say, hey, that's going to be an interesting shot. So let's go over there, and what do? Same thing, nose towards the light, body away from the light, creates an interesting lighting on her face. I get a good shot. Here I'm in Hawaii, and they have these trees called banyan trees, and they have these very long vines. They look like roots growing down from the tree, and I thought it was very interesting. She had beautiful eyes, and so like a beautiful shade of light brown, and so I wanted to kind of create a little bit more interest by putting a little bit of shadow right on her face. Here's those same trees, but I shot it as a couple there. And here's another. I just posted this photo on my Facebook not too long ago. And it was in Mexico. I shot a wedding, and I saw this beautiful shadow against the wall. And this is how I incorporated that shot. There was actually a huge window on the left of the bride. I just took that out in Photoshop, but there was a huge window there. But this is the shot that I had in mind. I knew I was going to take the window out, and I said, hey, this is going to be a great shot. Here's a bride sitting in a chair, and I just saw the light coming through the window, and we were just kind of waiting to go to the reception. We had some downtime. I said, hey, Serena, can you sit in this chair here? It's going to be great. And just lined up, her face in that bright spot. Here's another one. This was actually taken like 10 seconds. She was about to walk down the aisle here, and as she's walking through these trees, I saw how it lit up her face, and I go, oh my gosh, that's a great shot, back up. And so I just stopped her, I backed her up, and I took 10 seconds to take this shot, and then just continued walking. Here's a wall. A lot of times you'll find walls with interesting shadows on them, and so if you just kind of follow those same rules and keep the nose towards the light, then you're going to get a good shot. Here's in that same area, but there was a pole there, and there was some light, and I go, oh, I think this would be cool, like a film noir look, because I saw the shadows on the ground. And so, but it was on location, and this next shot shows you exactly where it was. That's the situation it was in. But that's the vision that I had in my mind when I shot it. Here's another shot of a person, and a lot of times they have these railings, and then they have this iron gating or whatever paneling, I guess, that goes under the railing. And so this situation is some iron rod work, and the sun was firing through it because I was walking up the stairs, and my subject here, he was following me, but I go, oh, wait, stop. This is a great shot. And so I saw that light as he was about to walk up the stairs with me, and I thought it was interesting using some shadows here. Here's another interesting technique you can do. Sometimes when you shoot, and if the sun is real strong, let's go back to this photo, it's going to look too contrasty. Like, it's not going to look great because the sun is going to be too strong and cast these very, very strong shadows. Now, here I am in Jamaica, and that's exactly what happened in this situation. The sun was coming through so strong that the shadows on her were too dark. So the question is, how did I lighten up those shadows? what did I do? Well, I used my flash to fire into the side of her to reduce the shadows. I didn't turn my flash on strong enough to completely eliminate them. I just turned it on a little bit so I could act like a second lighting to kind of give me the exposure and the way those shadows looked on my subject. I could have done the same thing here on this photo if I didn't like those shadows. If those shadows seemed a bit too strong, I could have took a flash and maybe put it on 16th power, 32nd power, and just simply fired it on his face and his body to reduce the strength of the shadows. So you can use your flash in the same way. If the shadows are too strong, you could always reduce it with your flash and control it that way. And so here's another photo where there was too many shadows across her face and it didn't look too good. And so I just used my flash to fire in there to take away some of the shadows. Okay, so here goes to our next tip. Colored light using gels. Now, I want to show you one photo that I did this with, and I used constant light here. And so how do you do shots like this? Now, it's very important when you do this type of shot that, one, the first color, let's say the pink, the main light here, the first color creates the highlight and a shadow. You have to be able to create a highlight and a shadow when you set this lighting up. So the highlight, of course, is her face. Where's the shadow? The shadow is her cheek. That has to be completely in shadow because the second color can only be seen when it's firing in the shadow area. So the first light, so in every time you see a picture like this, is the first light is the highlight. The second light is where all the shadows are. So if you don't create any shadows across that person's face or the body or whatever, you're not going to see the second color because that other light, if it's not in shadow, your main light is putting light in that area and diluting the color. So that's why you have to have two different colors, and that's why it's best to try to do this with constant light, so you can kind of see your different lighting where the shadow is. And so if it's not creating a shadow, you can reposition your light so that you can see the shadow on the cheek, and then you take your second color, whatever color you want it to be, and you shine it right in that shadow, and that will give you your second color. So that's how you create these types of shots, is that you have to have a highlight and you have to have a shadow in order for you to get a shot like this. And here is my lighting situation. You can see I'm shooting this at 1.8 at 1/320th of a second at ISO 200. This is lighting situation number 3. This was actually inside a studio. And I want to show you the second shot here. We actually added 3 colors. So now we had 1 color for the highlight, 1 color for the shadow. We just say, hey, let's just go for it. Let's just put another light behind her and put an orange gel on it. And let's get this kind of 3-color look. And so you can see my camera settings there again. 55 millimeter, 1.8. 1/320th of a second, ISO 200. And here is the actual lighting setup. Okay, you could see I just had the constant lights and I just put some gels over it. I'm sure that they'll have those at Precision's, colored gels you can put over your lighting. And you can go ahead and do these effects. And you can go to a dark area. Here's the easiest way to learn. Go to a dark area and use some constant lights and do it, because then you can see the highlight and the shadow, and you can figure out where to place the lighting quite easy when you're using constant light. Now I did the same thing going outdoors to get this look. And so how I did this was there was a blue neon in the window of a store. And so I just used that blue neon to create the highlight on their face and you can see the reflection in the sunglasses. And then I just took another light, constant light, with a pinkish type of gel over it to light up her hair. And then I took it into Photoshop and kind of, souped it up a little bit to give me that look. But this could be a very creative look by using colored light to give your portraits just a little bit of, just something different. It's not like you're going to live off of these, but just something different. And if you get good at it, it could be part of your signature style, which is pretty cool. Now, another thing, you're going to see the pigment come out the best when you use a dark-skinned person, because the darker skin will absorb the color better. It's just like when you're gelling a backdrop, right? If you ever done this before, if you use the wrong thing to do is use a completely white backdrop, because the gel, the color can't be picked up when you see white. But when it's a darker color, like a gray or a black, that's when you really see these colors show. And so just like, your skin is the same way. The darker it is, it's going to pick up color better. And so, but I showed both types of people here. Like this one is a light complected person and the other one is a dark complected, but you still can get it to work. But I think the effect is a little bit more when the skin is a bit darker. Okay, so let's go back into this situation here, and let me show you how I did this. And so what this is here, and there's my situation, and this was done with all constant lights. And how it was done, okay, was my backdrop. I used some very expensive lighting gear. I'm not sure if you guys have laundry baskets where you live, but get a $4 laundry, $6 laundry basket, get a constant light, and you can put a gel through it, and you can see how it lights up part of the background. So on the left-hand side, I had the red light. And then in the right-hand side, I took another laundry draft. So you're going to have to bust the bank and spend $10 for 2 laundry baskets. I put another light on it, and it was easier just for me to type up the whole entire side to get that blue tone on there. And so I did the blue tone, and you can see the pattern on the wall. The next picture is the pattern on the wall that it created. And so now I've got this cool pattern with a red, and I took these with my iPhone, so I couldn't get the exposure quite right. But anyways, this was my final shot. And it was just something simple, using your creativity. And you can use anything. You don't have to use laundry baskets. Maybe you find something else. Now, they make laundry baskets with round circles. Maybe I'll try that next, right? So you never know. But just the whole point is to use your creativity and, get out there, experiment with gels, experiment with color, add that into your repertoire. And I think when you have creative control, then you're going to do a lot better. Now, I noticed that it's 1 o'clock, so I have to get on it here. So good thing we're coming down to the end. So here's another setup, and I'm using flash this time. So that I use constant light. Now I'm using flash. I'm using all sorts of flashes, and I did this in one shot. Okay, and my environment's real bright. So what's your camera setting is set your camera. So when you don't fire the flash, your camera looks completely black in the behind it. Right? You take a picture. What did you just do? You eliminated all your ambient light. So now when you use your light, you're creating everything. You have full control of everything. So I have one light on my main. This is not even diffused light. So I just got it really close to her. I got one light in the back for rim light. And these aren't even the same flash company. We have one Godox there. We have another thing. And I set the other two. I'm using 3 different camera flash brands. I've got one that I'm triggering, the Godox, the main, and the other 2 are being triggered by just putting it in slave mode. Then you see the flash way in the back on the speaker stand. In the lobby, I found these little reeds coming out of this vase, and I go, oh, that's going to be perfect. That's going to give me some great texture on the background. And so you can see I got this shot next. So that's what I got right where you saw it, just using colored light. And that's not even diffusing it, okay? That's just straight bare flash, okay? And so here's another shot with the laundry baskets here. And I think this one I might have even done just in TTL mode. I just set them all in TTL mode, shot it. I made a few adjustments, and it looks pretty good. But if you want to set it up in manual, I'm going to give you the formula right now. So here's your formula. You set your flashes about 6 feet away from that center part. And so how do I just measure it. I just reach out, right? So if I'm 5'7", I reach out towards the flash, towards the middle of the backdrop, and I go, oh, that's about 6 feet, add 5 more inches, and that's about good, right? And so that's how I line it up. And then I stand right where that star is. You see that star in the background? I stand right there, or I put my head right in the middle of where that background is supposed to be, where the subject, it lines up right in the middle, and I look and see if I can see the flashes pointing at me. If I don't see the flashes pointing at me, then I know it's not directly pointing right there, and I move the flashes so I can see them pointing at me as I stand in the middle, and that perfectly lines them up. Then I have this chart here. So if it takes you f11 and 100 shutter speed and 100 ISO, if it takes you f11 to make your whole entire scene dark because it's super bright in there and you need to do it at f11, then you would set all your flashes at 1/2 power. These are just standard flashes, and you will get the perfect shot. I guarantee you it. I've done this example hundreds of times. And so, and then again, you just put if you want real soft light on your subject, you just put it 3 feet from your subject, but you have to put an umbrella or a diffuser over it. Now, if you're using a softbox, not double diffuse, just one diffuser, if you wanted to double diffuse it, then you would have to get a stronger light, and you couldn't use small lights. You'd have to get some more studio lighting, because at f11 you need stronger than your typical flash. But if you were happen to shoot it at f5.6, so you can see the next setting down there. If you can make your whole scene dark by putting your camera to 5.6, ISO 100, shutter speed 100, then all you would have to do is put all your flashes at 1/8 power to do this shot. That's nothing. That's why, you could see that I did everything with constant light, because when you make your environment dark, the less power you need. Now, let's say you were able to take a room and really make it completely dark, and maybe you just had a little bit of light on. You could, if you shot at f2, A, B, and C, all 3 flashes would be at 1/64th power. That is hardly any light at all. So you don't need much light to do this shot, especially the darker that you make it, the less light that you need to. So let's round this out here, and let me show you a couple more creative things real fast. And here I'm doing a shot by the water, and this is the pool or a beach party by the beach, and I'm using these lights that are waterproof, and so I could be more aggressive with my shots. And you can see I was doing a Sony event in Hawaii here, and this is the shot that I got using that uplight, and you can see that beautiful uplight on them. Now here's another situation here where I'm actually putting the water underneath the water. And what's interesting when you put water underneath, and so maybe what you can do is just take a light, put some plastic bags over it or whatever, or I'm not sure Precision has these Stella lights which go underwater, or diving lights work. And so what happens is the water is wavy and moving all the time, right? And so as the light is coming underneath and that water is moving, it's going to create this film noir lighting that's going to be going across their face and moving, and it has this really cool look to it, which you can get that light that going from underneath. And what I also did was I had a light in the back, as you can see there. And when you have backlight, you can have them splash and create rain. And so that's what I did. I had another person just create rain. And so you can only see water and rain if it's from side light or backlight. You ever try taking, when you're a kid, try taking a picture of the rain because you want to show, oh, it was raining really hard. You take a picture, your flash goes off, and you don't even see the rain. It's because you need to see, in order to see rain and light and smoke, it has to be lit from behind or off to the side. And that's how you're able to see it. And so I did this shot. Okay. And so here's my last example. I know want to end this really fast. It's the clipboard. So I went out and buy a very inexpensive clipboard to do these shots like this, right? And I'm going to show you the setup after I show you the shots I use with a clipboard. Okay. And what is it? It's a clipboard, and I wrap these little fairy lights around it, and so I can easily hold it in front of my lens to give me that look. And what you can also be creative, and so in this second setup, I took a blue gel and I cut a hole in it, and so I could get, you know, the white light on the subject, but then it's kind of blue around the edges. And so you can get real creative. You can, you know, do 2 colors, 3 colors, who cares, whatever. Get a clipboard, mess around with it, have fun. And here I'm out in location, shooting through this clipboard, wrapping these lights around it to give you a different look for some creativity. Okay, so I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to go review what we just learned. 1, there was nose to light, especially when you're shooting in bright light. You have to do this effect. 2, reflection, or not a reflection, but a reflector, either in your environment or bringing a reflector can, you know, add something to your shots there. Learn to look for these reflections and how they create catch lights is very important. Emotion, whether you're going to throw, the subject is throwing some debris in the air or whatever, that's great. Or you have them moving, because motion equals emotion. So whenever you get motion in there, you're going to get different varieties of motion. Using shadows in your picture, colored light in gels is something that you should do. And you can use water, get out there in the water, even use a reflector in water, which is very cool. And go out right now and get yourself a clear clipboard and put stuff in front of it, and you can put that in front of your lens to create these DOF effects, depth of field, blurred depth of field, which looks really cool. Here's my information if you want to get a hold of me. So that's Facebook, Scott Robert Lim, Instagram, and I can get a hold of me there, right? Okay, so anyways, that is it. And wrapping this up, I know you have to get moving on. So I don't know if somebody wants to take over and end this thing. I don't know.